A billionaire driven by a burning desire for revenge marries a cleaning lady to humiliate his ex. But on their wedding night, he is stunned to discover that she was... The Manhattan skyline glittered like diamonds against the twilight sky, a fitting backdrop for the man who stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. Landon White adjusted his Patek Philippe watch, a $2.3 million timepiece that barely registered as significant in his vast collection of luxuries. At 42, he was at the pinnacle of the fashion industry, his company, White Luxury Group, having just acquired its fifth major fashion house in 3 years. "Mr. White, the board meeting is ready to begin." His assistant's voice came through the intercom, precise and professional, just as he demanded of everyone in his orbit. "5 minutes," he replied, his steel-gray eyes fixed on the Empire State Building. The corporate titan's reflection in the window showed a man carved from ambition, tall, impeccably dressed in a Tom Ford suit, with salt and pepper hair that only added to his distinguished appearance. The White Tower, as his headquarters was known throughout New York, housed the nerve center of his $12 billion empire. 52 floors of glass, steel, and power, crowned by his private office suite that included a helipad for his Eurocopter EC-135. Everything in Landon's world was measured, controlled, and perfect, or so he thought until 3 hours ago. The morning edition of the Wall Street Journal lay on his Italian marble desk, the headline still burning in his mind. Fashion's power couple splits. Natalie Harris seen with tech billionaire in St. Bart's. The photos were undeniable, his fiancée of 2 years wrapped in the arms of Marcus Chen, founder of the world's largest social media platform. His phone buzzed with a message from Natalie. "I guess you've seen the news, we need to talk." Landon's jaw tightened. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was a calculated business move. Natalie Harris, CEO of Harris Beauty Empire, had been more than his fiancée. She'd been his strategic partner in a planned merger that would have created the largest luxury conglomerate in the Western Hemisphere. "Send them in," he commanded through the intercom, straightening his Hermes tie. As his board members filed into the conference room adjacent to his office, he caught a glimpse of movement in the hallway. A cleaning woman was quietly working, her head down, pushing her cart past the glass doors. The board meeting proceeded with military precision. Landon presented the contingency plans he'd developed since dawn, his voice never wavering as he outlined the company's new direction. "The Harris merger is dead," he announced, "but we're acquiring Maison Laurent instead. The paperwork will be signed tomorrow in Paris." "But sir," one board member interjected, "Maison Laurent wasn't for sale." "Everything is for sale," Landon replied coldly, "at the right price." After the meeting, as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, Landon noticed the cleaning woman again. She was different from the usual staff, younger with a quiet grace in her movements as she went about her work. Her name tag read, Lauren. "You're new," he stated, startling her as she emptied his office trash. "Yes, sir, 2 weeks." Her voice was soft but clear, her eyes meeting his briefly before returning to her task. In that brief moment, Landon saw something that caught his attention, a quiet strength completely devoid of the artificial polish that surrounded him daily. "Your full name?" "Lauren Mitchell, Mr. White." A plan began forming in his mind, sparked by the stark contrast between this simple woman and Natalie's calculated glamour. His phone buzzed again, another message from Natalie, this time with a thinly veiled threat about their combined market share. "Miss Mitchell, would you join me in my office for a moment?" Lauren hesitated, clutching her cleaning supplies like a shield. I should finish my rounds." That wasn't a request. Landon's tone was firm but not unkind as he held the door open. Inside his office, Lauren stood awkwardly, her simple uniform a stark contrast to the luxury surrounding her. Landon studied her. Mid-20s, natural beauty hidden beneath practical clothing, no wedding ring. "How much do you make per hour, Lauren?" "Sir?" "Your hourly wage, what is it?" $15, sir." Landon moved to his private bar, pouring himself a glass of 50-year-old Macallan. "Would you like to make more?" "Significantly more." Lauren's expression shifted from confusion to wariness. "What exactly are you suggesting, Mr. White?" "Marriage." The word hung in the air between them. Lauren's eyes widened, her hands gripping the handle of her cleaning cart until her knuckles turned white. "I don't understand." Landon took a measured sip of his scotch. "It's quite simple. I need a wife. You need financial security." I'm offering you a business arrangement that would solve both problems. But why me? Because you're everything Natalie Harris isn't, he stated bluntly. You're authentic, unpolished, real. Your presence in my world would be the ultimate statement. Lauren's chin lifted slightly, a spark of defiance in her eyes. So I'd be your revenge prop? You'd be my wife, with all the privileges that entails. A generous monthly allowance, a new wardrobe, a life most people only dream of. In return, I need your complete dedication to the role for 1 year. And after the year, a divorce with a settlement that would ensure you never have to clean another office again. Lauren looked out at the glittering city below, her reflection ghostly in the darkened glass. What if I say no? Then you walk out that door and continue your life exactly as it is. The choice is entirely yours. Landon placed his empty glass on the bar. You have 24 hours to decide. As Lauren turned to leave, her hand on the door handle, Landon added, "One more thing, this conversation never happened. Whether you accept or decline, your discretion is non-negotiable." She nodded once, then slipped out into the hallway, leaving Landon alone with his empire and an empty glass. His phone buzzed one final time, a message from Marcus Chen. "No hard feelings, old friend. Business is business." Landon deleted the message without responding, his mind already racing with the possibilities his new plan presented. In the cutthroat world of luxury and power, sometimes the best revenge wasn't served cold. It was served with a completely unexpected twist. The next morning, Lauren's response arrived via a handwritten note left on his desk. "I accept your terms, Mr. White, but I have conditions of my own." A rare smile crossed Landon's face as he read the note. Perhaps this arrangement would be more interesting than he'd anticipated. The private dining room at Le Bernardin buzzed with quiet efficiency as Lauren stared at the contract before her. The leather-bound folder contained 30 pages of meticulously detailed terms for her new life, each one more overwhelming than the last. Across the table, Richard Sterling, Landon's personal attorney, waited with practiced patience while his client observed the scene from the window. "Everything must be signed before we proceed with the announcement," Richard explained, his wire-rimmed glasses reflecting the soft chandelier light. "The prenuptial agreement, the confidentiality clauses, the social media guidelines. The rules of my cage," Lauren murmured, her fingertips trailing over the embossed paper. She looked up at Landon. "Your terms are extensive." Landon turned from the window, his Tom Ford suit catching the morning light. "They're necessary. Section 12 outlines your new wardrobe allowance. Victoria will handle your styling." As if on cue, the door opened, and Victoria Chen swept in, her Hermes Kelly bag matching her precisely tailored Oscar de la Renta suit. As White Luxury Group's creative director, she'd built a reputation for transforming fashion houses into gold mines. Now she would be transforming Lauren. "So this is our project," Victoria said, circling Lauren with a critical eye. "Stand up, dear. Let me see what we're working with." Lauren rose slowly, conscious of her off-the-rack dress from Target. Victoria's rapid-fire assessment was brutal in its efficiency. "We'll need everything. Complete wardrobe overhaul, posture coaching, etiquette training, hair, skin, nails, a total reformation." She tapped her iPad. "I'm thinking Carolina Herrera for the engagement announcement, perhaps Valentino for the wedding itself." "I can dress myself," Lauren protested. "Not for this world you can't," Victoria replied, not unkindly. "In this sphere, every thread tells a story. Every accessory makes a statement. You're about to become Mrs. Landon White. That name comes with expectations." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of signatures and instructions. By lunch, Lauren's head was spinning with protocol do's and don'ts. She barely touched her cote de boeuf as Richard outlined the public appearance schedule. "The engagement party will be at the Metropolitan Museum of Art next Friday," he explained. "We've rented the entire Temple of Dender wing. The guest list includes—" "My sister," Lauren interrupted. "I want Rachel there." The room fell silent. Landon's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "That wasn't part of our discussion." "It is now." Lauren met his gaze steadily. "She's all the family I have left. If you want this to look real, I need her there." Before Landon could respond, his phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Alexander White, his younger brother and CFO of White Luxury Group. "Excuse me," he said, stepping away from the table. "Alex, what is it?" "You better turn on CNBC," Alex's voice crackled through the speaker. "Natalie's making her move." Landon gestured to Victoria, who immediately pulled up the financial news on her tablet. Natalie Harris was on screen, resplendent in a white Chanel suit, standing beside Marcus Chen at a press conference. Merger between Harris Beauty Empire and Chen Global will revolutionize the luxury digital space, Natalie was saying, her smile razor-sharp. Our combined technology and market presence will redefine how high-end brands connect with consumers. Lauren watched the color drain from Victoria's face. They're creating a digital luxury marketplace, she whispered. They'll control the online distribution for every major brand. Not mine. Landon's voice was arctic. Call the board. Emergency meeting in an hour. The next 48 hours were a crash course in Lauren's new reality. While Landon fought battles in boardrooms, she was thrust into a whirlwind of preparations. Her modest apartment in Queens was packed up by discreet movers, her belongings sorted into what could be kept, very little, and what would be replaced, almost everything. Victoria installed her in a suite at the Mark Hotel, while Landon's penthouse was being prepared for the future Mrs. White. Each day brought a parade of experts, dialect coaches to soften her Queen's accent, personal trainers, nutritionists, and an endless stream of designers. Hold still, commanded Paolo, Landon's personal stylist, as he studied her hair. We need to decide on your signature look. Everything about you must appear effortless yet deliberately curated. Nothing about this is effortless, Lauren muttered, watching in the mirror as Paolo transformed her simple brown hair into what he called sophisticated honey gold waves. Her only respite came in the form of stolen moments with her sister Rachel, who arrived for a styling consultation that was really a chance to talk privately. Are you sure about this? Rachel asked, her nurse's scrubs a stark contrast to the luxury hotel suite. This isn't just playing dress-up, Lauren. These people, for their world is different. Lauren touched the Harry Winston diamond necklace that now adorned her throat, a starter piece according to Victoria. I'm sure about the opportunity it presents. 1 year, Rachel. 1 year, and I can pay off Mum's medical debts, put you through graduate school. But at what cost? Rachel's eyes filled with concern. I've read about Landon White. He's brilliant, but he's ruthless. They call him the Ice King of Fifth Avenue. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. It was Richard Sterling, looking grave. Miss Mitchell, there's been a complication. Someone leaked your employment history to page 6. They're running a story tomorrow. Billionaire's new fiancée from cleaning lady to society queen. Lauren felt her stomach drop. How did they? Natalie, Richard said grimly. She's trying to embarrass Landon, make the engagement look desperate. It is desperate, Lauren whispered. But Richard was already on his phone, damage control protocols in motion. That evening, Landon appeared in her suite for the first time since their arrangement began. He looked slightly disheveled, his tie loosened, a rare crack in his perfect facade. The story breaks at midnight, he said without preamble. We need to address it. How? By owning it. The public loves a Cinderella story. He paced the room, his controlled movements betraying an underlying tension. We'll give an exclusive interview to Vanity Fair, Love at First Sight in the boardroom. You'll talk about how your humble beginnings shaped your work ethic, how we connected over shared values. Lies wrapped in designer labels, Lauren observed, watching him pace. Does that actually work? Landon stopped, studying her with an unreadable expression. Everything works if presented correctly. That's the first rule of luxury. Perception creates reality. And what's the reality here, Mr. White? She emphasized his formal name, a reminder of their true relationship. What happens when the fairy tale falls apart? Something flickered in his eyes, uncertainty perhaps, or a moment of genuine emotion quickly masked. The fairy tale won't fall apart because we won't let it. Too much is at stake. As he turned to leave, Lauren called after him. I read about Natalie's digital marketplace. It's brilliant, isn't it? She's not just trying to hurt you, she's trying to revolutionize the industry. Landon froze, his hand on the doorknob. For a moment, his perfect posture faltered. Yes, he admitted quietly. She is. That night, as Lauren lay in her $1,000 sheets, she thought about masks and the prices people pay to maintain them. In the morning, she would step fully into her role as Landon's fiancée, armed with designer clothes and carefully crafted stories. But as she drifted off to sleep, she wondered if perhaps she wasn't the only one being transformed by this arrangement. The next day brought the first test of their facade. The page 6 story exploded across social media, But before the gossip mills could spin it negatively, White Luxury Group's PR machine launched their counter-narrative. Photos appeared of Lauren and Landon at charity events, carefully backdated and planted, along with quotes from anonymous sources about their secret romance. Remember, Victoria coached as they prepared for their first public appearance, you're not just wearing these clothes, and you're wearing his reputation. Every step, every smile, every gesture reflects on the White brand. Lauren nodded, zipping herself into a Givenchy gown that cost more than her former annual salary. In the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. Paolo had worked his magic, transforming her into someone who looked like she belonged in Landon's world. But as she descended the grand staircase of the Metropolitan Museum of Art that evening, her hand perfectly positioned on Landon's arm, she caught a glimpse of something unexpected in his expression. For just a moment, as cameras flashed and reporters called their names, the Ice King's mask slipped. He looked at her not as a business arrangement, but as a man seeing something he never expected to find. The moment passed quickly, his practiced smile returning as they faced the press. But Lauren had seen it, and she knew that beneath the perfect surface of their arrangement, cracks were beginning to form. The question was, what would emerge when those cracks finally broke open? The Saint. Regis New York's presidential suite glowed with soft candlelight, rose petals scattered across imported silk sheets, worth thousands. Lauren stood at the window, still wearing her Valentino wedding gown, its hand-beaded crystals catching the city lights below. The wedding had been a spectacle of wealth and power, exactly what Landon had wanted. Every detail, from the 100,000 white orchids flown in from Thailand to the vintage Dom Perignon, served in Baccarat crystal, had been designed to make headlines. Now, in the quiet aftermath, she felt the weight of what they'd done. The ring on her finger, a flawless 15-carat diamond that had once belonged to a European duchess, seemed to burn against her skin. "Would you like a drink?" Landon's voice came from behind her. He'd loosened his bow tie but otherwise looked as impeccable as ever, even after 12 hours of perfectly choreographed celebrations. "No." Lauren turned to face him. "I think we need to talk." "About?" He poured himself a glass of 50-year-old Macallan, the same scotch he'd been drinking the night he proposed this arrangement. "About why you really chose me." Lauren's voice was steady. "Not the revenge story you've told yourself, not the business arrangement we've presented to the world. The truth." Landon's hand stilled on the crystal decanter. "We've been through this." "No," Lauren interrupted. "We haven't. You've dictated terms. I've followed scripts. We've played our parts perfectly. But now we're married, and I think I deserve the truth." Something in her tone made him turn, really looking at her for perhaps the first time since this began. Lauren had changed in the weeks since their arrangement started, but not in the way he'd expected. Yes, she wore couture with grace now, could navigate social events with practiced ease, but underneath the polished exterior, her essential nature remained unchanged, direct, unflinching, real. "You want truth?" He set down his glass. "Fine. Let's trade. You tell me your story. The real one, not the sanitized version Victoria created for the press, and I'll tell you why I chose you." Lauren moved to the suite's living room, carefully arranging her wedding gown as she sat. "My mother was a nurse at New York Presbyterian. She raised Rachel and me alone after our father left. She worked double shifts, extra weekends, anything to give us opportunities she never had." Her fingers traced the intricate beading on her dress. "When she got sick, the bills started piling up. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. There was nothing they could do except try to make her comfortable." Landon sat across from her, his expression unreadable. "That's why you took the cleaning job." "Jobs, plural. 3 of them, actually. Days at the hospital, evenings at your building, nights at a 24-hour diner in Queens." Lauren's eyes met his. The insurance covered some of it, but the experimental treatments she wanted to try, those were out of pocket. She died anyway, leaving Rachel and me with almost $500,000 in medical debt. "Why didn't you declare bankruptcy?" "Because she would have hated that. She always paid her debts, taught us to do the same." Lauren's voice caught slightly. Rachel had just started nursing school, following in Mom's footsteps. I couldn't let her drop out to help with the bills, so I kept working, kept trying to chip away at what we owed. Landon stood abruptly, walking to the window. The city sprawled before them, a glittering tapestry of lights and shadows. "The night I proposed this arrangement," he said finally, "you were cleaning my office differently than the others." "What do you mean?" Most of the cleaning staff rushed through, doing the minimum required. You were organizing the magazines on my coffee table by date, straightening the artwork on the walls, adjusting things that most people wouldn't even notice. He turned back to her. It reminded me of someone. Natalie, my mother. The admission seemed to cost him something. She was obsessive about details, about everything being just so. Not because anyone would notice, but because she believed that how you do anything is how you do everything. Lauren watched as Landon's perfect facade began to crack, revealing glimpses of the man beneath. What happened to her? She died when I was 12. Car accident, black ice on the Taconic State Parkway. My father. He paused, taking a breath. He couldn't handle it. Started drinking, making risky business decisions. By the time I was 16, he'd lost almost everything. I watched our family's legacy crumble because he couldn't maintain control. So you built your empire on control. I built it on excellence, he corrected. Every detail perfect, every move calculated, nothing left to chance. His voice hardened. Until Natalie. Lauren stood, the weight of her wedding gown suddenly oppressive. She wasn't just a business merger for you, was she? No. Landon's admission hung in the air. She was the first person I'd trusted completely since my mother died. I thought she understood me, understood why I needed things to be perfect. But she wanted more than perfection, Lauren guessed. She wanted power. She wanted control. My control. He laughed bitterly. The merger with Chen Global? She'd been planning it for months, probably since before we got engaged. Every dinner with Marcus, every casual meeting at charity events. She was orchestrating her own empire while pretending to help build mine. Lauren moved closer to him, close enough to smell his expensive cologne. And that's why you chose me? Because you thought I was the opposite of her? Simple, unthreatening, easily controlled? I chose you, Landon said slowly, because when you organized my magazines and straightened my artwork, you weren't doing it for anyone but yourself. You didn't know I was watching. You didn't expect anything in return. You just cared about doing things right. The admission hung between them, more intimate than any physical touch could have been. Lauren felt something shift in the air, the carefully constructed walls of their arrangement beginning to crumble. Mr. White, she began. Landon, he corrected softly. I think, given that we're married, you should call me Landon. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed, a news alert that would shatter their moment of connection. The headline read, Natalie Harris reveals White's new marriage a sham. Exclusive interview tomorrow. Landon's face hardened, his vulnerable moment vanishing behind his usual mask of control. But Lauren had seen beneath it now, understood the wounds that drove him. She's trying to destroy what we've built, he said, already reaching for his phone to call his PR team. No. Lauren caught his hand, surprising them both. She's trying to destroy you, and there's a difference. She met his startled gaze. You want to know why I really accepted this arrangement? Because I saw something in you that first night. Not just the billionaire, not just the businessman, but someone who understood what it means to lose everything and build yourself back up. For a long moment, Landon stared at their joined hands, her simple elegance next to his rigid control. Then, slowly, his fingers interlaced with hers. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we stop playing her game. Lauren's voice grew stronger. You wanted revenge. Let's give her something she can't fight against, authenticity. Authenticity isn't a business strategy, he argued, but his tone lacked conviction. No, Lauren agreed. It's better than that. It's the one thing Natalie Harris has never understood, the power of being real. As they stood there, hands joined against the backdrop of their wedding night, both realized that their carefully constructed arrangement had evolved into something neither had anticipated. The question was no longer whether they could maintain the perfect facade, but whether they were brave enough to let it crack completely. The next morning, as New York's elite buzzed with anticipation of Natalie's interview, Lauren woke to find a single white orchid on her pillow, not from the elaborate wedding arrangements, but a simple bloom that Landon must have gone out to find himself. Next to it lay a handwritten note. Perhaps it's time we wrote our own story. In that moment, she understood that their turning point hadn't come from any grand gesture or public declaration, but from the simple truth they'd shared in the quiet hours of their wedding night. The real challenge now would be facing what came next, not as characters in a revenge plot, but as two people discovering that sometimes the most powerful relationships begin when carefully laid plans fall apart. The morning sun was just beginning to paint the Manhattan skyline when Victoria burst into their suite, her usually perfect composure notably ruffled. She carried her iPad like a shield, her Louboutin heels clicking rapidly across the marble floor. "The interview is worse than we thought," she announced without preamble. "Natalie has emails, old correspondence between her and Landon discussing merger strategies. She's spinning it to make it look like this marriage was a desperate business move after their deal fell through." Lauren, now dressed in a sophisticated Chanel morning suit, watched as Landon absorbed this news. To her surprise, he seemed almost calm. "Let me see the preview clips," he requested, taking Victoria's iPad. The video showed Natalie in her element, perfectly poised in a Dior ensemble, her practiced smile containing just the right hint of concern as she spoke to the interviewer. "I worry about him, really," Natalie was saying, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "To marry someone so unprepared for our world, just to prove a point? It's not healthy. The Landon I knew would never have made such a rash decision." "She's good," Lauren observed quietly. "The concerned ex, the subtle dig at my background, the implication that you're unstable, it's perfectly crafted." Victoria looked at her sharply. "You understand what she's doing?" "I spent years watching people like her at the hospital," Lauren explained. "Rich donors who'd come to have their photos taken with sick children, society wives organizing charity galas. They all had that same careful way of making kindness feel like cruelty." Landon set down the iPad, his expression thoughtful. "You see more than people realize, don't you? It's amazing what you become invisible to when you're cleaning someone's office," Lauren replied with a slight smile. "People talk as if you're not there. They drop their masks." The door opened again, this time admitting Alexander White, Landon's brother. He carried a thick folder and wore an expression of grim determination. "The Chen Global deal is worse than we thought," he reported, spreading documents across the suite's dining table. "They're not just creating a marketplace. They're building an entire ecosystem. Social media integration, influencer networks, virtual fitting rooms. They're going to revolutionize how luxury goods are sold online. And our brands would be left out," Landon concluded, "unless we agree to their terms." "Which would give them control over our digital presence," Alex confirmed. "Natalie knows our weakness. We've always focused on traditional retail. Our online infrastructure is outdated," Lauren finished. When everyone turned to look at her, she shrugged. "I used to help my sister shop for knockoff designer bags. The replicas had better websites than most luxury brands." A strange expression crossed Landon's face, something between amusement and revelation. "You know their world," he said slowly. "The people who want luxury but can't afford it. The ones who shop online because they're intimidated by boutiques." "I was one of them," Lauren reminded him. "Until recently, my idea of luxury was a department store perfume." Victoria's eyes suddenly lit up. "That's it. That's our angle." She began pacing, her creative energy palpable. "Instead of fighting Natalie's narrative, we embrace it. Lauren becomes our bridge between worlds, the woman who understands both sides of luxury. The authenticity you talked about last night," Landon mused, looking at Lauren. "Not just as a personal strategy, but as a brand evolution." Alex was already running numbers on his phone. "If we could capture even a fraction of the aspirational market while maintaining our luxury positioning, we'd need to move fast," Victoria interjected. "Get ahead of Natalie's interview with our own narrative." Lauren's first official interview as Mrs. White, talking about democratizing luxury without diminishing its value. Lauren held up her hand. "Wait, before we turn this into another business strategy, I need to know something." She turned to Landon. "Last night, was it real or just another perfect performance?" The room fell silent. Victoria and Alex exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with this display of genuine emotion in what had always been a space for business decisions. Landon stood slowly, his usual mask of control softening at the edges. "Last night was the first real thing I've felt since I saw those photos of Natalie in St. Bart's," he admitted, "and it terrifies me." It was the most honest thing he'd said since they'd met, and Lauren felt its impact ripple through the room. Victoria quietly ushered Alex toward the door, leaving the newlyweds alone with their shifting reality. "I don't know how to do this," Landon continued once they were alone. "Build an empire? Yes. Navigate billion-dollar deals? Absolutely. But this," he gestured between them, "being real with someone, it wasn't part of the plan. Lauren moved closer to him, her designer heels bringing her almost to his height. "Plans change," she said softly. "Sometimes they have to." The moment was interrupted by both their phones buzzing simultaneously. Natalie's interview had dropped early, and social media was exploding with reactions. But as they stood there, inches apart in their carefully curated suite, neither moved to check their notifications. Instead, Landon slowly reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind Lauren's ear, his touch gentle in a way she'd never expected from the Ice King of Fifth Avenue. "Help me," he said quietly. "Not with the business, not with Natalie. Help me remember how to be real." Lauren's answer was interrupted by a knock at the door, the first of what would undoubtedly be many interruptions as they dealt with the fallout from Natalie's interview. But something had fundamentally changed between them. The perfect facade had cracked, and through those cracks something genuine was beginning to grow. Their story was no longer just about revenge or business strategy. It had become about two people from different worlds, discovering that sometimes the most valuable things in life can't be bought, controlled, or perfectly planned. They just have to be lived, one authentic moment at a time. 1 month into their marriage, Lauren stood in the private dining room of Le Cirque, hosting her first charity luncheon as Mrs. Landon White. Her Zac Posen dress fit perfectly, her Harry Winston diamonds caught the light just so, and her smile never wavered as she addressed the room full of Manhattan's most influential women. "The White Foundation's new initiative focuses on medical debt relief," she explained, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "We're partnering with major hospitals to identify families struggling with catastrophic medical expenses and providing assistance through a dedicated fund." Across the room, Victoria gave an approving nod. Lauren had come a long way from the nervous cleaning woman who once struggled to make small talk at social events. Now she commanded attention effortlessly, her natural warmth breaking through the usual Arctic sophistication of high society gatherings. "It's remarkable," whispered one socialite to another, "how quickly she's adapted to our world." But adaptation came with its own price. Later that evening, as Lauren changed for dinner in their Central Park West penthouse, she caught her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirrors of her custom-designed closet. The woman staring back at her wore a fortune in designer clothes, moved with practiced grace, and knew exactly which fork to use for each course. Sometimes she barely recognized herself. "You were magnificent today," Landon's voice came from the doorway. He'd loosened his tie, a small gesture that she'd come to recognize as his way of relaxing his guard. The old Lauren would have been terrified, she admitted, selecting a pair of Christian Louboutin heels. "Sometimes I wonder if she's disappearing completely." Landon moved behind her, his reflection joining hers in the mirror. "Is that what you think? That you're losing yourself?" "Aren't I? 3 months ago I was working 3 jobs and living in Queens. Now I'm hosting $1,000 a plate luncheons and discussing Fashion Week with Anna Wintour." "You're not losing yourself," he corrected gently. "You're growing. There's a difference." Their eyes met in the mirror, and Lauren saw something there that had been appearing more frequently lately. Genuine warmth, breaking through his traditionally icy exterior. Their relationship had been evolving, subtle changes marking each passing day. "We have the Boston merger meeting tomorrow," she reminded him, changing the subject. "Alexander sent over the briefing papers." "Cancel it." Lauren turned to face him, surprised. "What?" "Cancel the meeting. Cancel everything tomorrow." He reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 first-class tickets. "We're going to Paris." "Paris? But what about—" "The company won't collapse if I take 1 day off." His lips quirked in a small smile. "Besides, there's something I want to show you." 24 hours later, they stood in a small private apartment above Place Vendôme. Unlike their usual luxury hotel suites, this space felt lived in, personal. Family photos lined the walls, and well-worn books filled the shelves. "This was my mother's pied-à-terre," Landon explained, running his hand along a familiar piece of furniture. "She would bring me here during Fashion Week when I was young. It's where she taught me about true luxury. Not just the price tags and brand names, but the craftsmanship, the history, the art of it all." Lauren moved through the space, taking in the details. A vintage Hermès scarf framed on the wall, a collection of antique perfume bottles, fashion sketches from decades past. "You've kept it exactly as she left it. I've never brought anyone here before," he admitted quietly, "not even Natalie." The significance of this moment wasn't lost on Lauren. This wasn't just Landon sharing a space. He was sharing a part of himself that he kept carefully guarded from the world. Their Paris interlude stretched into an impromptu week, much to Alexander's dismay back in New York. But something was shifting between them, walls coming down brick by carefully laid brick. Landon showed her his mother's favorite cafe, tucked away in Le Marais. They spent afternoons in small ateliers where master craftsmen still created luxury goods by hand, evenings at tiny bistros far from the tourist crowds. "You're different here," Lauren observed one evening as they walked along the Seine. "More relaxed, more human?" he supplied with a self-deprecating smile. "My mother used to say that Paris was where people came to remember who they really were, but their bubble of authenticity couldn't last forever." Reality crashed back in the form of an urgent call from Victoria. "Natalie's digital platform launches next week," she reported. "They've already signed exclusive deals with Gucci, Prada and Louis Vuitton. The industry is calling it the future of luxury retail." Lauren watched as Landon's shoulders tensed, his business mask sliding back into place. But before he could fully retreat behind his walls, she made a decision. "Take me to the artisans we visited," she said suddenly. "The ones who make everything by hand. The leather workers, the jewelers, the textile makers." "Why?" "Because while Natalie is building the future of luxury retail, we're going to remind people of its soul." She pulled out her phone, quickly typing notes. "A documentary series, The Heart of Luxury, intimate portraits of the craftspeople who create these masterpieces. We'll stream it on our own platform, show the human side of high-end fashion that gets lost in digital marketplaces." Landon stared at her for a long moment, and she could see his brilliant business mind processing the possibilities. "It's risky," he said finally. "Luxury houses guard their production processes carefully. Then we'll start with your brands. Show the world that White Luxury Group isn't just about profit margins and market share. It's about preserving an art form." Later that night, as they packed to return to New York, Lauren found a small box on her pillow. Inside was a delicate gold bracelet, clearly antique. "It was my mother's," Landon said softly from behind her. "She wore it the day she married my father. She always said it was her reminder to stay true to herself, no matter how much life changed around her." Lauren's fingers traced the intricate metalwork. "Landon, I can't—" "You can," he interrupted. "Because you've helped me remember something I'd forgotten, that sometimes the most valuable things aren't the ones in our vaults or on our balance sheets." The moment was interrupted by his phone buzzing with another crisis demanding attention. But as they boarded their private jet back to reality, something had fundamentally changed. Their marriage of convenience had evolved into a partnership of equals, each helping the other find balance between who they were and who they needed to be. Back in New York, their transformation became increasingly apparent to those around them. At board meetings, Landon actually listened to opposing viewpoints instead of simply imposing his will. Lauren's charity initiatives expanded beyond traditional galas into meaningful community engagement programs. "You've changed him," Alexander remarked one day after a particularly successful quarterly review. "I haven't seen my brother this present since before our mother died." But their evolution didn't come without challenges. The old guard of New York society wasn't entirely pleased with Lauren's influence. Whispers circulated at charity events about her common background, her efforts to make luxury more accessible. "Darling, you simply can't put craftsmanship videos on the internet," one board member's wife declared at a dinner party. "It diminishes the exclusivity of our brands." "Actually," Lauren replied smoothly, "we've seen a 40% increase in engagement among younger luxury consumers since launching the documentary series. They want authenticity, not just status symbols." She caught Landon hiding a smile behind his wineglass. He'd been doing that more lately, showing genuine emotion, letting his perfect facade crack in small but significant ways. Their biggest test came during Fashion Week, when Lauren insisted on hiring diverse models for White Luxury Group's shows, including several who didn't fit the traditional luxury market mold. "It's commercial suicide," Victoria warned, waving market research reports. "Our core customers expect a certain image." "Our core customers are changing," Lauren argued, "and if we don't change with them, we'll become irrelevant." To everyone's surprise, Landon backed her decision. The shows were a massive success, generating more social media engagement than any previous season. Young influencers praised the brand's authenticity, while traditional luxury consumers appreciated the maintaining of quality and craftsmanship. "You were right," Landon admitted late one night as they sat in his home office reviewing the quarterly results. About everything. The authenticity, the need for change, the importance of staying true to oneself. Lauren looked up from her tablet, studying his face in the soft lamplight. The Ice King was thawing, revealing the man beneath the carefully constructed armor. "We were right," she corrected gently. "We're better together." As if to prove her point, the latest market reports showed White Luxury Group's digital presence growing faster than Chen Global's platform. Their documentary series had gone viral, spawning a whole movement of luxury brands, highlighting their craftspeople and authentic heritage. Natalie called, Landon mentioned casually one evening as they prepared for bed. She wanted to discuss a potential collaboration between our platforms. Lauren paused in removing her jewelry. "And? I told her we're doing fine on our own." He moved behind her, helping her with her necklace clasp. Some partnerships are about more than business strategy. Their eyes met in the mirror, and Lauren saw in his reflection the same truth she felt in her heart. Their arrangement had become real, transforming them both in ways neither could have anticipated. The cleaning woman and the billionaire had found something genuine in their fake marriage, something that transcended revenge plots and business mergers. They'd found themselves, and in doing so, had found each other. As they fell asleep that night, Lauren's head resting on Landon's chest, the antique gold bracelet glinted in the moonlight, a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful transformations happen when we least expect them, and the greatest luxury of all is the freedom to be ourselves. Their growing closeness didn't go unnoticed by the press. Page 6 ran a feature titled, "Ice King Melts, the Real Love Story Behind Fashion's Power Couple." The article detailed their public appearances, noting how Landon's traditionally stern demeanor had softened, how he actually smiled in photos now, how his hand often found the small of Lauren's back in an unconscious gesture of intimacy. The transformation extended to their home life as well. The sterile perfection of Landon's penthouse gradually gave way to touches of warmth. Family photos appeared on side tables, Lauren's books mingled with his business texts on the shelves, and the formal dining room saw more casual dinners than business meetings. One Sunday morning, Rachel visited for brunch, bringing their mother's old recipe box. She found Lauren and Landon in the kitchen, still in their sleepwear, attempting to make pancakes. "Well, this is a sight I never thought I'd see," Rachel remarked, watching her brother-in-law still in his monogrammed pajamas, cursing at a smoking griddle. The great Landon White, defeated by breakfast. "Not defeated," he corrected, wiping flour from his cheek. "Strategically regrouping." Lauren couldn't help but laugh. 6 months ago, this scene would have been unimaginable. Landon insisted on perfection in everything, including his meals, which were usually prepared by his private chef. But here he was, making a mess of their designer kitchen, and actually enjoying it. Their domestic happiness, however, faced constant challenges from the outside world. At a crucial board meeting, one of the senior directors questioned Lauren's influence on company decisions. "With all due respect, Mr. White," the director said, "your wife's background hardly qualifies her to guide luxury market strategy." The room temperature seemed to drop as Landon rose from his chair. The old Ice King emerged briefly as he fixed the director with a steely gaze. "My wife's background, as you put it, gives her insight into a market segment we've been ignoring for years. Our recent success proves her value to this company. If you can't see that, perhaps it's your qualifications we should be questioning." Later that evening, as they prepared for a charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Lauren brought up the incident. "You didn't have to defend me like that." "Yes, I did," Landon replied, adjusting his bow tie. "Not because you needed defending, but because they needed to understand something. You're not just my wife in name anymore, you're my partner in everything." The gala proved to be another turning point in their public image. Lauren, wearing a stunning custom Alexander McQueen gown, gave a speech about the White Foundation's new initiatives. She spoke without notes, sharing personal stories about her mother's battle with cancer and the impact of medical debt on families. The authenticity of her words moved many to tears, and donation pledges poured in. "That's how you connect with people," she explained to Landon afterwards as they swayed together on the dance floor. "Not with perfect words or rehearsed speeches, but with truth." "You make it sound so simple," he murmured against her hair. "It is simple. That's what I've been trying to show you all along." Their dance was interrupted by Victoria, who rushed over with urgent news. A major fashion blog had just broken a story about Chen Global's digital platform experiencing significant security breaches. Customer data had been compromised, and luxury brands were pulling out of their exclusive contracts. "Natalie's going to try to blame this on us," Victoria warned. "She's already suggesting industrial espionage." Lauren felt Landon tense beside her, his old instincts kicking in: protect, control, attack. But then he surprised everyone by laughing. "Let her try," he said calmly. "We have nothing to hide. Our success isn't built on undermining competitors, it's built on understanding our true value." That night marked a definitive shift in their relationship, both personal and professional. Landon began actively seeking Lauren's input on business decisions, not just accepting it. She, in turn, grew more confident in her role as both his wife and business partner. Their home life evolved as well. They established small traditions: Sunday brunches with Rachel, evening walks in Central Park, quiet dinners where business talk was banned. Landon learned to appreciate the imperfect moments. Lauren singing off-key while getting dressed, burning toast in their expensive kitchen, leaving her shoes in the middle of their bedroom floor. One evening, as they sat in their private screening room reviewing rough cuts of their artisan documentary series, Lauren noticed Landon was unusually quiet. "What's wrong?" she asked, pausing the footage of a master leather worker in Florence. "I was just thinking about my mother," he admitted. "She would have loved this, showing the world the real heart of luxury. And she would have loved you." "Because I'm helping the business?" "Because you're helping me," he corrected. "I spent so many years trying to be perfect, trying to control everything, that I forgot what she always used to say. Luxury without humanity is just expensive emptiness." Lauren curled into his side, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Tell me more about her." And so in the dark of their screening room, Landon shared stories he'd never told anyone. About his mother's love of imperfect things, her belief that true luxury was about the story behind the object, not just its price tag. How she used to take him to small artisan workshops before visiting the grand fashion houses, teaching him to appreciate the hands that created beauty. As he spoke, Lauren realized that their evolution wasn't just about her adaptation to his world or his softening toward hers. It was about both of them finding a new way to exist, combining the best of both their perspectives to create something authentic and valuable. The next morning, Landon surprised her by suggesting they host a dinner party, not for business associates or social obligations, but for people they actually wanted to spend time with. Rachel was invited, along with Alexander and his wife, Victoria and her partner, and even Paolo, the stylist who'd become a close friend. The evening was far from perfect by old Landon standards. The soufflé collapsed, wine was spilled on the expensive tablecloth, and conversation veered wildly from fashion to family stories to embarrassing moments. But as Lauren watched her husband laughing openly at his brother's terrible jokes, she knew they'd achieved something more valuable than perfection. They'd created a real life together. Later that night, as they got ready for bed, Landon paused in his nightly routine. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice serious. Lauren's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" "I'm happy," he said simply. "Not successful happy or achieving goals happy, just happy. And it terrifies me because I've never had this much to lose." Lauren crossed the room and took his face in her hands. "Then don't think of it as something to lose. Think of it as something we're building together, one imperfect moment at a time." Their kiss was interrupted by a news alert on both their phones. Natalie was giving another interview, this time hinting at shocking revelations about their marriage. But for the first time, neither of them rushed to check the details or call their PR team. Some things, they'd learned, were more important than maintaining a perfect image. Sometimes the most luxurious thing of all was simply being present in a moment of real connection. And as they fell asleep that night, Lauren wearing one of Landon's old t-shirts instead of her silk pajamas, and Landon's arm wrapped protectively around her waist, they both knew that what had started as a business arrangement had become the most valuable asset in both their portfolios, a genuine partnership built on trust, growth, and the courage to be imperfectly real. The first signs were subtle. Lauren found herself unusually tired during New York Fashion Week, barely able to keep her eyes open during crucial meetings. Food that she normally loved suddenly turned her stomach, and even the scent of her favorite Jo Malone perfume made her nauseated. But it wasn't until she nearly fainted during a board presentation that she finally visited her doctor. The pregnancy test results sat on the marble counter of their master bathroom like a bomb waiting to explode. Positive. The word seemed to pulse with implications, possibilities, and complications she hadn't prepared for. This wasn't part of their arrangement. This wasn't supposed to happen. Lauren stared at her reflection in the gold-framed mirror, her hand unconsciously moving to her still flat stomach. She was wearing a cream Chanel suit worth more than her old annual salary, her hair and makeup perfect for the charity luncheon she was supposed to be attending. Instead, she was frozen in place, wondering how this would change everything. The sound of the penthouse elevator arriving broke through her thoughts. Landon was home early, a rare occurrence that would have delighted her any other day. Now it made her pulse race with anxiety. "Lauren?" His voice carried through their vast apartment. "The foundation called. You missed the luncheon." She could hear his footsteps approaching, measured and precise like everything else about him. How would he react to something so unplanned, so beyond his careful control? "Lauren?" He appeared in the doorway, impeccable in his Tom Ford suit, concern etched on his features. His eyes immediately went to the test on the counter, and for once, the legendary Ice King was speechless. "I was going to find the right way to tell you," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. Landon moved closer, his eyes never leaving the test. "Is it?" "Yes." The silence that followed seemed endless. Lauren held her breath, watching his reflection in the mirror, trying to read his expression. Then something extraordinary happened. Landon White, the man who controlled billions with unwavering precision, began to laugh. It wasn't his usual controlled chuckle or his public relations smile. This was real, almost bordering on hysterical, as he ran his hands through his perfectly styled hair. "Landon?" He turned to her and she saw something in his eyes she'd never seen before, pure, unfiltered joy. "We're having a baby?" Before she could respond, he'd crossed the space between them and pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of the finest porcelain. "We're having a baby," he repeated, this time with wonder. Their moment of joy was interrupted by Lauren's phone buzzing insistently. Victoria's name flashed on the screen, along with multiple missed calls and messages. "Don't answer it," Landon murmured against her hair, but they both knew their private world couldn't last. The messages kept coming, more urgent with each buzz. Finally, Lauren reached for her phone. "Turn on CNBC," Victoria's voice was tight with tension. "Now." Landon grabbed the remote for their bathroom's hidden television, and suddenly, Natalie Harris's perfectly composed face filled the screen. She was sitting in what appeared to be a prime-time interview, wearing a designer suit that Lauren recognized from next season's collection, a power play showing she still had inside access to the fashion world. "I'm concerned about the integrity of the White luxury group," Natalie was saying, her practiced sincerity almost convincing. "Our investigation has uncovered serious irregularities in their digital platform development. We have evidence suggesting corporate espionage." Lauren felt Landon tense beside her as Natalie continued. Furthermore, sources close to the company suggest that Lauren White's recent initiatives, while appearing philanthropic, have been carefully orchestrated market manipulations. The question is, was she aware of what she was doing or merely a pawn in Landon's game? The accusations kept coming, each one more damaging than the last. Natalie painted a picture of corruption, manipulation, and fraud, all while maintaining an air of concerned former insider. "We need to call the PR team," Lauren said, already reaching for her phone. But Landon caught her hand. "No. No. Landon, she's trying to destroy everything we've built." "Exactly. Everything we've built. Together." He turned off the television and faced her. "Do you trust me?" "Of course." "Then trust me when I say we're not fighting this her way." He placed his hand gently on her stomach. "We have more important things to think about now." But the business world waited for no one, not even expectant parents. Within hours, their phones were ringing constantly with calls from board members, investors, and media outlets. White Luxury Group's stock had dropped 15% in after-hours trading. "We need to respond," Alexander insisted during an emergency meeting in their penthouse. "The board is panicking. Major investors are threatening to pull out." Victoria nodded in agreement. "The digital platform launches next week. If we don't counter these allegations now, nobody will trust it." Lauren watched as Landon stood at his usual spot by the window, but his posture was different. Instead of his typical rigid control, there was a new kind of strength in his stance. "Call a press conference," he said finally. "Tomorrow morning, but not at the office." "Where then?" Victoria asked. "The artisan workshop in Brooklyn, the one from our documentary series." Lauren understood immediately what he was planning. "You want to show them the truth, the whole truth," he confirmed. "No more perfect facades, no more carefully crafted images. It's time to be real." The next morning, instead of their usual sleek corporate backdrop, Landon and Lauren stood in a working leather workshop. The smell of fine leather and craftsmanship filled the air as artisans continued their work in the background. The press conference began not with prepared statements, but with Landon rolling up his sleeves and sitting down at a workbench. Lauren joined him, both of them picking up tools under the guidance of master craftsman Giovanni, who had been featured in their documentary. "Ladies and gentlemen," Landon addressed the confused reporters, "you're here because yesterday allegations were made about the integrity of our company, about our methods, our values, and our future." He held up a piece of half-finished leather. "This is luxury. Not the price tag, not the brand name, but the human skill that transforms raw material into something beautiful. My mother taught me that. I forgot it for a while, lost in the world of profit margins and market share." Lauren picked up where he left off, her voice steady. "When Landon and I married, everyone had their own version of our story. A revenge plot, a business arrangement, a modern Cinderella tale. The truth is both simpler and more complicated." She met Natalie's eyes in the crowd. Of course she had come to witness this. "The truth is that sometimes the most valuable things in life can't be planned or controlled. They have to be discovered, nurtured, and allowed to grow naturally." Landon's hand found hers as she continued. "Yes, I was a cleaning woman. Yes, our marriage began as an arrangement. And yes, I've influenced changes in how White Luxury Group approaches business. Because real luxury isn't about exclusion. It's about excellence, authenticity, and the human touch." "As for the allegations of corporate espionage," Landon added, his voice carrying clearly through the workshop, "we invite any investigation. Our digital platform was developed entirely in-house, inspired by Lauren's understanding of how real people want to interact with luxury brands. Every line of code, every user interface element was created by our own team." Giovanni stepped forward then, speaking in heavily accented English. "Mr. White, he bring his wife here many times. They watch, they learn, they understand. This," he gestured to the workshop, "this is real luxury, not numbers on computer." The press conference continued, but with an unprecedented format. Landon and Lauren gave tours of the workshop, demonstrating their hands-on involvement in the crafting process. They showed early sketches of their digital platform, explaining how it was designed to bridge the gap between traditional craftsmanship and modern technology. As the event was winding down, Natalie approached them, her Louboutins clicking on the workshop floor. "A charming show," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "But do you really think this authenticity play will save you?" Lauren felt Landon's hand tighten on hers, but before he could respond, she stepped forward. "It's not a play, Natalie. That's what you never understood. Real power doesn't come from controlling everything. It comes from being true to who you are." "How naive," Natalie scoffed. "This isn't a fairy tale." "No," Landon agreed, pulling Lauren close. "It's better. It's real." His hand moved protectively to her stomach, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by Natalie. Her eyes widened slightly as she registered what it meant. "You're pregnant," Lauren confirmed. "Life has a way of surprising you, doesn't it?" The news spread like wildfire through the assembled press. By evening, every major outlet was running the story. White Luxury Group heir on the way. Power couple expects first child. But the bigger story was what happened to their stock price. Instead of falling further, it began to rise. The authenticity of their press conference, combined with the personal news, resonated with both consumers and investors. Social media exploded with clips from their documentary series, praising their commitment to traditional craftsmanship and genuine values. That night, as they lay in bed in their penthouse, Lauren traced patterns on Landon's chest. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked quietly. "Miss what?" "The perfect control, the unshakable image. The Ice King of Fifth Avenue." Landon was quiet for a moment, his hand resting on her stomach. "Do you know what I remember most about being that person? The loneliness. Every decision calculated, every relationship measured for its strategic value. I thought that was strength. And now?" He shifted to look at her in the dim light. Now I know that real strength is being brave enough to let life surprise you, to let people in, to love without guarantees. Lauren felt tears prick her eyes. Damn pregnancy hormones. Even if it means giving up control? Especially then. He kissed her softly. Besides, I have a feeling this little one is going to teach us both about letting go of control. As if in response, Lauren felt the first flutter of movement in her stomach. She grabbed Landon's hand, placing it where she'd felt it. They lay there in silence, waiting, until another tiny movement made them both catch their breath. "That's our baby," Landon whispered, awe in his voice. "Our real miracle." Outside their window, New York glittered like a jewelry box full of promises. Somewhere, Natalie was probably plotting her next move. Tomorrow would bring new business challenges, press inquiries, and the constant pressure of maintaining their empire. But in that moment, none of it mattered. They had found something more valuable than revenge, more powerful than perfect control, more luxurious than any designer label. They had found love in its purest, most authentic form. And as their baby moved again beneath their joined hands, both Lauren and Landon knew that this messy, unpredictable, perfectly imperfect life they were building together was the greatest success story either of them would ever be part of. The following weeks brought a whirlwind of changes. The White Luxury Group's digital platform launched to unprecedented success, with their artisan documentary series becoming an unexpected viral sensation. Authentic luxury trended globally, and their approach sparked a revolution in how high-end brands connected with consumers. But not everything was smooth sailing. Lauren's pregnancy brought its own set of challenges to their carefully structured world. Morning sickness didn't care about board meetings or fashion shows. Their private chef had to completely revamp his menu to accommodate her changing tastes, and Landon found himself making midnight runs for peculiar food combinations that would have horrified his sophisticated palate a year ago. Pickles dipped in Nutella, he questioned one night, watching his wife enjoy her latest craving in their marble kitchen. She was wearing his Yale sweater over silk pajama bottoms, a combination that would have once seemed unconscionable to him. "The baby wants what it wants," she shrugged, offering him a pickle. He surprised them both by trying it. These small moments of imperfection became precious to them, but the outside world demanded their attention. Natalie hadn't given up after the workshop press conference. Instead, she changed tactics, launching a series of subtle attacks through industry insiders and social media influencers. "She's targeting our relationships with traditional luxury consumers," Victoria reported during a strategy meeting, suggesting that our new accessibility diminishes the exclusivity of our brands. Landon, who would have once reacted with immediate defensive measures, now looked to Lauren. She was reviewing the latest market research while absent-mindedly rubbing her growing belly, a gesture that never failed to soften his expression. "What do you think?" he asked her. "I think we show them something they've never seen before." Lauren stood, moving to the whiteboard in their home office. A limited edition collection, but not in the traditional sense. Instead of just making it exclusive through price, we make it exclusive through experience. She began sketching out her idea, a series of masterclasses where elite clients could work alongside their artisans, creating their own luxury pieces under expert guidance. "True exclusivity isn't just about owning something expensive," she explained. "It's about understanding its value, participating in its creation." The initiative was a masterstroke. Society's elite clamored for spots in the programs, eager to learn from master craftsmen in intimate settings. Photos of wealthy clients working with leather, textiles, and jewelry artisans flooded social media, creating a new definition of luxury experiences. Natalie attempted to counter by accelerating Chen Global's digital platform rollout, but technical issues plagued their launch. In contrast, White Luxury Group's more measured, authenticity-focused approach continued to gain momentum. One evening, as they prepared for bed in their massive master suite, Lauren found Landon sitting in their reading nook, looking through an old photo album. "What's that?" she asked, settling beside him. "Pictures from my mother's workshop visits." He showed her a photo of a young boy watching intently as an artisan worked with leather. She used to say that true luxury was about the story behind the object, the hands that made it, the skills passed down through generations. Lauren studied the photo, seeing in that serious young boy the man she'd come to love. "She would be proud of you now, because of the company's success. Because you've remembered what she taught you, about value, about authenticity, about letting people in. Their moment was interrupted by a sharp kick from the baby. Landon's hand immediately moved to feel it, his face showing the same wonder it had the first time. "Speaking of letting people in," Lauren said, wincing at another kick, "we should probably start thinking about names." The naming discussion led them down memory lane, sharing stories of their families and histories. Lauren told him about her mother's dream of opening a small alterations shop, how she'd saved every extra penny while working as a nurse. "That's why I couldn't give up on paying her medical bills," she explained. She never gave up on her dreams, even when they seemed impossible. Landon was quiet for a moment, then stood abruptly. "Come with me." He led her to his home office, using his fingerprint to open a hidden safe behind an abstract painting. Inside was a small leather-bound notebook. "This was my mother's business journal," he explained, handling it carefully. She wrote down all her observations about luxury, craftsmanship, and running a successful brand while maintaining authenticity. He placed it in Lauren's hands. "I think she'd want you to have this." The gesture brought tears to Lauren's eyes. Damn hormones again. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed with an urgent message from Alexander. "Natalie's called an emergency meeting of the Luxury Brands Council," she read aloud. "She's proposing new guidelines for digital platforms that would effectively lock us out of the online luxury market." Landon took the phone, read the message, and did something that surprised them both. He laughed. "Let her try," he said, pulling Lauren close. "She's still playing the old game, thinking it's about control and exclusion. She doesn't understand that the market has changed. People want connection, authenticity, real value. The board might not see it that way," Lauren cautioned. "This could hurt us politically in the industry. Then we'll change the industry." His hand rested on her belly as another kick punctuated his words. "For this little one, for a future where luxury means more than just price tags and exclusivity." The next morning, they faced the Luxury Brands Council together. Lauren wore a custom maternity suit that Paolo had designed specifically for her. Elegant but comfortable, much like their new approach to luxury. Landon stood beside her, his usual perfect posture now softened by genuine confidence rather than rigid control. Natalie's presentation was flawless, her arguments about maintaining traditional luxury market barriers compelling to the old guard. But when she finished, Lauren asked to speak. 20 years ago, she began, a nurse in Queens saved every extra penny to buy her daughter a designer scarf, not because of the label, but because she believed in investing in quality, in supporting true craftsmanship. That scarf lasted through high school graduations, first jobs, and countless life moments. It became more than an accessory. It became part of our family's story. She touched her growing belly unconsciously as she continued. That's what real luxury is about. Not just exclusivity, but creating something of lasting value, something worth passing down, not just because of its price tag, but because of its meaning. The room was silent as she shared their vision for the future of luxury, one that balanced tradition with innovation, exclusivity with accessibility, perfection with authenticity. When the council voted, Natalie's proposals were defeated. But more importantly, White Luxury Group was commissioned to develop industry-wide guidelines for digital luxury retail, with a focus on maintaining craftsmanship and authenticity in the digital age. That evening, as they celebrated in their penthouse with their closest allies, Victoria, Alexander, Rachel, and the core team that had supported their vision, Lauren noticed Landon watching her with an unguarded expression of love and pride. "What?" she asked, self-conscious under his gaze. "I was just thinking about that first night in my office," he said quietly. "How I thought I was the one in control, the one with the perfect plan. And now I know that the best things in life can't be controlled or planned." He pulled her close, their baby moving between them. They have to be discovered, cherished, and allowed to grow naturally, just like love. The New York skyline glittered beyond their windows, but its cold perfection no longer matched their world. They had built something warmer, more real, a life that balanced luxury with authenticity, success with meaning, and perfect plans with beautiful surprises. As their celebration continued around them, Lauren and Landon shared a private smile, both knowing that their greatest adventure was still to come. In a few months their baby would arrive, bringing chaos to their ordered world and joy to their united hearts. And they would face it all together, not as the Ice King and his revenge bride, but as partners who had found something more valuable than all the luxury in the world. True love, real connection, and the courage to let life surprise them. Lucas Alexander White made his entrance into the world in true luxury fashion during New York Fashion Week, in the middle of a major business acquisition and with perfect dramatic timing. Lauren's water broke during a board meeting where Landon was finalizing the purchase of their biggest competitor in the digital luxury space. The usually unflappable Landon White dropped his Mont Blanc pen mid-signature when Lauren gasped, her hand gripping the custom-made conference table. The Ice King of Fifth Avenue transformed instantly into a nervous, expectant father, his perfect composure shattering as he rushed to her side. "The baby's coming," Lauren managed through gritted teeth, her Chanel maternity dress already soaked. What followed was a scene that would have been unimaginable a year ago. Landon White, still wearing his Tom Ford suit, helped his wife navigate through contractions in their private hospital suite at New York Presbyterian, the same hospital where Lauren's mother had once worked, where she had later passed away, now the birthplace of their son. "Breathe with me," Landon coached, his voice gentle as he supported her through another contraction. The man who once measured every word, every gesture for maximum business impact, now focused entirely on helping his wife through her pain. "Tell me again," Lauren gasped between contractions, "about the nursery renovation." Landon smiled, knowing she was asking more for the distraction of his voice than the actual details. The artisans from Florence finished the hand-painted mural yesterday. Giovanni himself crafted the leather details for the rocking chair. And that antique crystal mobile you loved, Victoria found the artist who made it. He's creating a matching piece for above the changing table. Another contraction hit, stronger than before. Lauren squeezed his hand with surprising strength. "I don't care about any of that right now," she admitted through clenched teeth. "I know," he kissed her forehead. "Neither do I." 23 hours later, Lucas arrived with a powerful cry that seemed to echo through the hospital's luxury wing. As the doctors placed him on Lauren's chest, Landon felt something shift inside him, the last walls of his carefully constructed facade crumbling completely. "He's perfect," Lauren whispered, tears streaming down her face as she counted tiny fingers and toes. "No," Landon corrected softly, his own eyes wet. "He's real. That's better than perfect." Rachel arrived first, still in her nurse's scrubs from her shift downstairs. She took one look at her usually composed brother-in-law cradling his son with trembling hands and broke into a knowing smile. "Looks like the Ice King has finally melted completely," she teased gently. Landon didn't even notice the jab, too entranced by Lucas's grip on his finger. "He's so strong," he marveled. The news of Lucas's birth spread quickly through New York's elite circles. The hospital's private entrance soon filled with couture-clad well-wishers, bearing outrageously expensive gifts. But Landon surprised everyone by limiting visitors to family and their closest friends. "The press can wait," he declared, when Victoria suggested a photo opportunity. Some moments should stay private. In the quiet of their hospital suite, between feedings and diaper changes, Lauren watched her husband transform. The man who once insisted on perfect control in all things now happily let himself be covered in baby spit-up, his expensive shirts bearing the badges of new fatherhood with pride. "Your father would never believe this," Alexander commented one evening, watching Landon pace the room with Lucas singing an off-key lullaby. "Our father," Landon corrected, not taking his eyes off his son, "never understood that some things are more valuable than maintaining a perfect image." When it was time to take Lucas home, Landon insisted on driving them himself instead of using their usual chauffeur. Lauren sat in the back of their Rolls-Royce Phantom with the baby, watching the city blur past the tinted windows. "I had our first meeting in this car," she remembered suddenly, "the day after the wedding. I was so nervous about scratching the leather seats." Landon caught her eye in the rearview mirror. "And now? Now, I'm more worried about baby spit up on them," she laughed. "But somehow that feels more important than maintaining perfect appearances." Their arrival home marked another shift in their world. The penthouse, once a showcase of pristine luxury, began to show signs of real life. Designer throw pillows shared space with burp cloths, and priceless art pieces watched over baby gear worth a fraction of their value, but infinitely more precious to the new parents. Landon's transformation extended to his business practices as well. In the weeks following Lucas's birth, he initiated major changes at White Luxury Group. The company's parental leave policy became the most generous in the industry. On-site childcare facilities were installed in their major offices, staffed by top professionals, but open to employees at all levels. "The board thinks you've lost your mind," Victoria reported during a home meeting, watching as Landon bounced Lucas while reviewing quarterly reports. "First the artisan initiative, now these family-friendly policies. They're saying you've gone soft." "No," Lauren interjected from her spot on the sofa, where she was reviewing design proposals. "He's gone human. There's a difference." The truth of her words was evident in every aspect of their lives. Landon still commanded respect in the business world, but his approach had fundamentally changed. Board meetings now included discussions of sustainability and social responsibility, alongside profit margins. The company's digital platform evolved to include features that connected consumers with the actual artisans creating their purchases. One morning, as they prepared for Lucas's naming ceremony, Landon received an unexpected email from Natalie. Her digital venture with Chen Global had struggled after the Luxury Council's decision, and rumors suggested their partnership was fracturing. "She wants to meet," he told Lauren, who was dressing Lucas in a christening gown that had belonged to Landon's mother. "Are you going to?" Landon watched his son grip the antique lace with tiny fingers. "No," he said simply. "Some chapters need to stay closed." The naming ceremony itself was a reflection of their new approach to life. Held in the same workshop where they'd once faced down Natalie's accusations, it combined luxury with authenticity in a way that felt naturally them. Master craftsmen worked at their benches, while society's elite mingled among the tools of their trade. Lucas's godparents, Rachel and Alexander, stood proudly as their nephew was welcomed into both worlds. "A year ago," Landon addressed the gathered crowd, his son secure in his arms, "I stood in this workshop and talked about redefining luxury. I thought I understood what that meant. I was wrong." He looked at Lauren, radiant in a custom gown that Paolo had designed to be both elegant and practical for a new mother. True luxury isn't about price tags or exclusivity. It's about value, not just in dollars, but in meaning. It's about creating something real, something that lasts, something worth passing down to the next generation. As if on cue, Lucas chose that moment to let out a happy gurgle, causing laughter to ripple through the crowd. The sound of genuine joy in a setting that once would have demanded only polite restraint felt like a perfect metaphor for their journey. Later that night, after the guests had gone and Lucas was finally asleep in his ornate crib, Lauren found Landon in his home office. He was holding his mother's old business journal, a thoughtful expression on his face. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, settling beside him on the leather sofa. "About legacy," he replied, pulling her close. "Not just the business empire or the family name, but the real legacy we're creating. Teaching Lucas that true value isn't about perfection or control, but about being genuine, being present, being real." Lauren traced the worn edges of the journal. "Your mother would be proud of that legacy. She would have loved you," he said softly. "You helped me remember everything she tried to teach me. About business, about luxury, about life." Their quiet moment was interrupted by Lucas's cries through the baby monitor. Both parents moved automatically, their perfectly synchronized routine another testament to how far they'd come. In the nursery, under the hand-painted Italian mural and the antique crystal mobile, they stood together watching their son. Lucas's tiny fingers wrapped around the soft leather of his custom-made crib rail, his other hand reaching for the simple stuffed bear that Rachel had bought from a hospital gift shop. "Look at that," Lauren smiled. "High-end and humble, perfectly combined." "Just like us," Landon agreed, wrapping his arms around her waist. The New York skyline glittered beyond the nursery windows, but its cold brilliance no longer defined their world. They had built something warmer, something real, a life that balanced luxury with authenticity, success with meaning, and perfect plans with beautiful chaos. In the quiet of their son's room, surrounded by the finest things money could buy, but focused only on the priceless gift of family, Lauren and Landon shared a look of complete understanding. Their arrangement had become an alliance, their alliance had become love, and their love had created not just a child, but a whole new way of living. The Ice King of Fifth Avenue was gone, replaced by a man who understood that the greatest luxury of all was the freedom to be imperfectly, authentically yourself. And the cleaning woman who had once feared scratching his leather seats now moved confidently through both worlds, helping others bridge the gap between aspiration and authenticity. As Lucas drifted back to sleep, his parents' hands intertwined over his crib. They knew that their story, which had begun as a calculated revenge plot, had evolved into something far more valuable, a testament to the power of real love, genuine connections, and the courage to let life surprise you with its most precious gifts. The White legacy would no longer be built on perfect control and cold luxury, but on the warm foundation of family, authenticity, and the understanding that true value isn't found in price tags or power plays, but in the genuine moments that make a life worth living. And as they left the nursery that night, Landon's arm protectively around Lauren's waist, they both knew that they had found something more precious than all the luxury in the world. They had found their truth, their love, and their perfect way to be imperfect together. 5 years later, the White Tower's executive floor buzzed with excited whispers as 5-year-old Lucas White raced through the corridors, his custom-tailored suit slightly rumpled. Behind him, Lauren walked more sedately, carrying their 18-month-old daughter, Sophia Rachel White, who wore a tiny Givenchy dress that perfectly matched her mother's outfit. "Daddy!" Lucas burst into Landon's office, interrupting what appeared to be a serious video conference. But instead of the stern reaction such an interruption would have once provoked, Landon's face lit up with genuine joy. "Ladies and gentlemen," he addressed the screen showing board members from around the world, "I believe my son has a more pressing matter for my attention. We'll reconvene tomorrow." The White Luxury Group had transformed over the past 5 years. Under Landon and Lauren's joint leadership, they'd revolutionized the luxury market's approach to authenticity and accessibility. Their digital platform had become the industry standard, seamlessly blending traditional craftsmanship with modern technology. "The artisans are waiting downstairs," Lauren reminded them, adjusting Sophia on her hip. "Giovanni flew in specially for this." Today marked the launch of their most ambitious project yet, the White Artisan Academy, a school dedicated to preserving traditional luxury craftsmanship while making the education accessible to talented students regardless of their background. The building's ground floor had been transformed into working studios where master craftsmen would teach their skills to the next generation. As they rode the elevator down, Lauren couldn't help but remember her first ride in this same elevator, wearing a cleaning uniform and carrying supplies. Now she wore couture as comfortably as jeans, but had never lost her appreciation for authenticity over appearance. The ceremony was intimate by their standards, just family, close friends, and key figures from the luxury industry. Victoria, now CEO of her own successful brand consultancy, stood with her wife and their newly adopted twins. Alexander and his family were there, his daughter holding hands with Lucas in a way that made both fathers slightly nervous. Rachel, who had completed her master's degree thanks to Lauren and Landon's support, attended in her chief of nursing scrubs. She'd insisted on finishing her shift at the hospital's new White Memorial Wing, named after Lauren's mother. As Landon prepared to cut the ribbon, a familiar figure appeared at the back of the crowd. Natalie Harris, looking elegant but somehow softer than she had 5 years ago, stood quietly observing. Her empire with Chen Global had collapsed spectacularly 2 years prior, leading to a period of public soul-searching. Lauren noticed her first and, after a moment's consideration, nodded in acknowledgement. Natalie returned the gesture, a silent understanding passing between them. Without her betrayal, none of this would have happened. "Before we open these doors," Landon addressed the gathering, "I want to share something my mother wrote in her journal years ago. True luxury isn't about exclusion. It's about excellence shared with purpose." He looked at his family, his eyes soft. "I forgot that lesson once, but life has a way of teaching us what really matters." Lucas tugged at his father's sleeve. "Can I cut the ribbon too, Daddy?" Landon lifted his son, positioning the ceremonial scissors in their shared grip. Lauren joined them, Sophia reaching out to pat the red ribbon with chubby fingers. Together they cut the ribbon to applause and camera flashes. As guests toured the academy, Lauren found Natalie standing before a display of student work. "Your son is beautiful," Natalie said quietly. "He has Landon's determination. And his father's heart," Lauren added meaningfully. "Though it took some of us longer to see that." Natalie nodded, understanding the gentle rebuke. "I'm opening a small atelier in Paris," she shared. "No digital platforms, no global domination plans, just beautiful things made with care." That sounds perfect, Lauren said sincerely. The day's biggest surprise came during the reception when Lucas proudly showed his parents what he'd made in his secret lessons with Giovanni. A small leather wallet, clumsily stitched, but made with obvious care. "Look inside," he urged. There, tooled into the leather in a child's careful hand, was a message. "For Daddy from Lucas and baby number 3. Landon's head snapped up to look at Lauren, who was smiling mysteriously. "Surprise," she whispered. That evening, as their family celebrated in the penthouse that had once been a showcase of perfect luxury and was now a genuine home, complete with children's toys mixed among the antiques, Landon pulled Lauren onto their balcony. "Did you ever imagine this?" he asked, holding her close as they watched the sunset paint the city gold. "That night when I proposed our arrangement? Not in my wildest dreams," she admitted, "but that's the beauty of letting go of perfect plans, isn't it?" Inside, they could hear Lucas telling Sophia an elaborate bedtime story about a king who learned to smile and a queen who taught him how. Victoria was arguing good-naturedly with Rachel about the twins' fashion choices, while Alexander discussed the hospital's newest charity initiative with his wife. "We should tell them about the baby," Lauren mused, but Landon held her back for one more moment. "First, there's something else we need to discuss," he said, suddenly serious. "I'm thinking of stepping down as CEO." Lauren stared at him in surprise. "But the company will be fine. Alexander's ready. And I want to focus on the academy, on teaching what really matters about luxury and craftsmanship." He touched her stomach gently. "On being present for every moment with our family." Lauren felt tears welling up. Some things hadn't changed with pregnancy. The Ice King of Fifth Avenue choosing family over empire? No, he corrected, kissing her softly. Just a man who finally understood the most valuable thing in life isn't perfect control, it's perfect love. As they rejoined their family inside, Lauren caught a glimpse of their reflection in the window. Not a cleaning woman and a billionaire, not a revenge plot gone wrong, but partners who had found something more precious than all the luxury in the world. The courage to be real, the freedom to be imperfect, and the joy of being truly, completely loved. If this story touched your heart, and you want to keep following inspiring and moving stories, be sure to check out our upcoming videos. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on new content that can brighten your journey and provide valuable insights. Join us and keep exploring stories that truly matter. I'm sure the next video that pops up on your screen will touch you as well, so click on it now, and we'll see you there.